He's the only happy doctor I'd ever met. People were shocked when their loved one returned to them and was normal and fine and happy. Well, better than what they would have called normal. I was exhausted and stressed, and I was working long hours, and I was trying to be a community person and a mother of a preteen daughter and a wife. And then I just thought, what have I done to myself? This is crazy. I need to get out of this business. That very moment when I was having those thoughts, a friend of mine called me and said, oh, there's a new doctor in town, and I'd really like you to help him. He really needs help with the business part of his practice. He's terrible at business, but he's very, very successful with his patients. And he really, his wife's pregnant, and he has no cash flow at all. And so that's how I met Bill Pettit. And when I found out I was going to meet a psychiatrist, I really was ready to kill the person that was taking me to this meeting, because I had 8 other psychiatrists under management, and they were just so difficult. And I was like, oh God, not another one. But then I met Bill, and he's the only happy doctor I'd ever met. He had no money, had nothing going right in his practice. He loved his work, loved his patients, loved life, and he just figured somebody would help him. I was shocked at his lightheartedness and his absolute certainty that it would all work out somehow, because most of the people that I worked with were pretty cynical, and they never expected anything to work out. Even when it was working out, it could always in their minds have worked out better. So I was intrigued, and I thought, he must have some kind of really cool drug. That's what I thought at the time. I was thinking, like, I want it. I noticed when I was looking around his office, just taking a little tour of the office, that he had an awful lot of files for a person that hadn't been in town that long, because most of the psychiatrists that I knew had a limited number of files, and they saw the same people for 10, 12, 15 years. Bill had more files than any of my other psychiatrists. So I said, I hate to be rude, but you have an awful lot of patient files. I mean, do people just not come back after you've seen them? Or, where are all these people? And he looks at me kind of funny, and he says, well, I assume they're having a nice life. And I was like, having a nice life? I mean, aren't you a psychiatrist? And he said, yeah. And I said, well, I don't know any psychiatrists that say their patients are having a nice life. They say, they're managing better on drugs, or they're not killing their kids, or we've kept them out of jail, or somehow they're bumbling along on the right meds. But, I've never heard anybody say that their patients are having a nice life. And Bill looked at me kind of funny. He said, well, isn't that the point? And I said, well, of course it's the point, but that doesn't mean anybody does it. And he just starts laughing, and he says, oh, I guess, Dick, that was our mutual friend, I guess Dick didn't tell you that I don't do traditional psychiatry. And I said, no, he didn't tell me anything. And Bill just started laughing. He said, well, I don't do what other people do. And then he explained that he was working in this new, at that time it was so new, there were like 50 other people that had ever heard of it in the whole world. And he said, I work from this very new approach, and it really makes a big difference with people and so on. He said, but you know what, as much as I need your help, and I'm sure you could help me with my practice, I wouldn't want you working for me if you didn't really appreciate and understand what I do. And it turned out that he did a group for his patients, family and friends, anybody that they were close to, because people were shocked when their loved one returned to them and was normal and fine and happy, well, better than what they would have called normal. So they would freak out, like, oh, when's the other shoe going to drop, or he can't be well, or what's, so Bill was doing a group for the other people to get an understanding of what he had shared with the patients. And so he said, why don't you come sit in a couple times and you get a feeling for what it is I do. And then if you feel good about it, we can do business. So that's how I got introduced to the principals. I went and sat in on the group, and then he asked, the first time I went, he said, this is a guest, Judy, and Judy is a business person that works with doctors, and she's thinking of working with us to help me run my practice better. And if you would like to share with her your experience of being my patient, please talk to her at the break or after the class. And I didn't think anyone would talk to me, and people were lining up because they all, just to put it as succinctly, I'm not going to tell you stories and take a lot of time, but what I noticed after listening to these people is three things. One, they gave Bill no credit whatsoever. Nobody said, oh, he's such a wonderful doctor, which is usually what people do. They were like, yeah, he's really nice. But, then they would give themselves credit. They would say, but, somehow in the course of talking to him, I had this incredible insight. And I realized that, and whatever it was they realized, they would tell me. And it was usually something like, I realized that I've been beating myself up my whole life and having all these thoughts that I didn't have to give my peace of mind away to those thoughts, and simple stuff. And then they would say, and I'm really quite confident that I'm fine now. They were very ordinary about it. So I was thinking, boy, this is really unusual, So I remember saying to Bill after the second time I went, I said, your patients don't seem to think you're doing anything. They all say to me, it's really nothing to do with him. I had this insight. And he just smiled like a big Cheshire cat grin, and he said, oh, that's wonderful. And I'm like, what kind of doctor is this? Where's the ego? And I said, it's wonderful. And he said, yeah. He said, it doesn't have anything to do with me, because they were healthy in the first place. They just didn't know it. And that's my point, is for them to start to see that for themselves. It's nothing to do with me. I can't fix anybody. And I was at that point completely baffled, but I really, really wanted to find out more. So I kept going back to these groups, and unbeknownst to me, I was changing, because I wasn't even trying. I was just listening, to people talk, and it was uplifting, and, it was fun. And after about the fourth group, I noticed that my attitude towards my business was completely different. I wasn't depressed anymore. I wasn't dreading going to work. And I started to see my clients with a different level of compassion and caring. And I started realizing that they were just calling me in a low mood. I remember I had this huge insight. The funny one that I had was I was paying for lunch with my MasterCard, and the lady handed it back to me upside down. And I noticed in bold numbers on the back, there was an 800 number, which I had never noticed before. And I looked at that number and I thought, gee, I've never called that number. And then I thought, well, why would I? The MasterCard always works, why would I have called the 800 number? And then I had this insight. Well, Judy, the reason your clients are always mad and upset and nasty to you when they call is because you're the 800 number. They only call you when something, they didn't hire you, so they could chat with you. They hired you because they assumed everything would be running smoothly, and they only call you when they're upset about something. When I realized that, I saw how funny that was, and I saw the innocence, and I just stopped taking it personally altogether and realized, oh yeah, I'm the 800 number for my clients.